I'm Bill Schneider, and I'll be teaching a course on politics in the fall of 2022, right after the midterm election. I am, by training, a college professor. I taught at George Mason University for 12 years. Before that, I was a television political analyst on CNN for about 20 years. I'm very happy to be able to teach this course immediately after the midterm election this year. And when I was teaching at George Mason, a student once asked me, "Professor, is this the most divided we've ever been as a country?" And my answer was, young man, we did once have a civil war. 750,000 Americans died in the Civil War, most of them not in battle, but from disease and starvation. But that was certainly the most divided tragedy we've ever experienced in this country. I would say, however, that this is the most divided we have been since that terrible episode of about 150 years ago. I'll be talking about the sources and roots, which has something to do with the same causes of the Civil War as the Civil War, namely the race issue. It started in the 1960s when the Democrats embraced civil rights and lost a lot of their Southern support. In 2004, Bill Clinton offered this defining explanation of American politics. He said, if you look back on the 1960s and on balance, you think there was more good than harm in it, you're probably a Democrat. And if you think there's more harm than good, you're probably a Republican. That's about the neatest explanation of the division in American politics that I've ever heard. It's a split really between two baby boomer presidents who came of age in the 1960s. The roots of our political deadlock go back to the great Civil War of the 1960s. It was a cultural civil war in which a new left and a new right emerged to challenge the country's post-World War II consensus. The center in American politics emptied out, especially in the 1970s. Europeans are often perplexed by the failure of Americans to get over the 60s. They too were convulsed by the great cultural changes during that turbulent decade. But the United States experienced the fierce and enduring backlash against those changes, a backlash which we're still living through with Trumpism, particularly based on America's unique religious culture. Religion has lost influence all over the world, but in the United States more than elsewhere, religion continues to thrive. And the reason goes back to the fact that a lot of settlers originally came to the United States in the 17th and 18th centuries, starting with the Puritans in the 17th century, seeking religious freedom. People who seek religious freedom, which includes even Jews in the 20th century who escaped the Soviet Union, seeking religious freedom. People seeking religious freedom are by definition deeply religious, and many of them preserve their religious commitment generation after generation. We'll discuss that in some detail in the class and when we talk about the division in American politics, which has a great deal to do not just with race, but also with religion.